Hello, and welcome to our second recording of Cowboy Coffee with Meeker Alumni, a podcast created to help reconnect Meeker High School alumni with former classmates, teachers, and friends while following current Meeker High School student-athletes, sports, and activities. With me today in the studio, provided to us by the Rio Blanco Herald Times, is my fellow host, Dale Dunbar, Meeker High School class of 1978, and Hallie Turner Blunt, Meeker High School class of 1995, along with our studio technician, Rich Klinzman, a graduate at Otis High School over on the eastern slope, class of 1994. Also with us here is our first ever guest, Mrs. Amy Chinn, Meeker High School class of 1992, and the current Meeker High School principal.
Hi.
Welcome to you all. We have kind of started this little deal. Dale and I, Hallie and Rich, met up last week, and we kind of just did a little promo podcast of sorts and tried to direct people, alumni, to our website, Cowboy Coffee with Coaches. If you go to that website, and then there's an icon, alumni, on there. I'm looking at Rich because he's kind of giving me the yes, that's correct. And I did do this and fill out the questionnaire, which has a few questions that we will ask Miss Amy. And they are kind of her name and would be her maiden name, I guess, and when she graduated, and maybe some of the activities you participated in sports. And then we'll go from there on.
Okay.
Some of that. So welcome, Amy.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bobby.
You're welcome.
So I graduated in 1992. My maiden name was Joy, so I was Amy Joy in 1992. In high school, I did volleyball and basketball. I also did drama, band. I was the student council president my senior year, class president. I don't know.
Well, okay. And so who was your volleyball coach?
Debbie Cook.
Okay. And who was your basketball coach?
So I had Bob Tucker up until my senior year, and then my senior year, Tammy Van Ort came as a young first-year coach and coached me.
Okay.
Her first year teaching and my senior year.
Okay. You got some questions, Hallie?
No, I was just remembering that I was a freshman that year when you were a senior, and Tammy, that was her first year coming into coach, and it was a fun year that year, both in volleyball and basketball.
She was here, 4 years?
3 years, 92, 93, 94.
Was that what it was?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She left when you were a senior,
Yep.
and that's when Rich took over.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. And I stopped by the newspaper, which we're currently in the Rio Blanco Herald Times newspaper, and was talking to Caitlin about us hooking up for this podcast, and we were wanting to get the archives, and so she went down and got the 1992 archive, and Hallie and I were going through it here and looking at some pictures here, so I'll bring those up here in a minute. But if you can maybe tell us about some of your teams and maybe some of your teammates. Who were some of your teammates?
Sure. Probably our most successful year was my senior year in both volleyball and basketball. In basketball, we were undefeated. The boys and girls team were both ranked number one, I don't know, sometime throughout the season, and then went to the state tournament ranked number one. And then we lost the state championship game to Wiggins. It's still a sore point.
And how many years ago? 92?
It's been a long time. Too long to be still carrying this grudge. I graduated with the other female athletes on the basketball team, Karen Borchard.
I saw her just the other day. She's in a coffee shop, and she is now a doctor.
She's a pediatrician, yes.
Well,
mm-hmm.
And where does she live?
Over in the Denver area.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then Beth Ann Jones is a lawyer in Denver. Jennifer Phelan. So our senior year, Jennifer Phelan's group won state track that year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that is, I think, our only girls' state championship in track.
Yeah, I believe so. And then Jennifer did played in college as well, didn't she?
Right, yeah. She played volleyball in college.
And where was that at?
At Fort Hays.
And where did you go to college?
I went to CSU,
Okay.
Fort Collins. I wasn't good enough to play any sports, let's just be real. So, yeah, Jennifer, Beth Ann, Karn, and I, we were... In volleyball, we had other players. Martha Taylor played on our volleyball team. Of course, we had all of these young ones, too, playing.
Learning.
Yes. Well, I don't know if they learned. They must have, because they went on to win a state championship, so maybe...
Well, I was thinking, honestly, before we came on here, I thought what is so neat about this alumni program and this idea is kind of get back in touch with some of the people that we knew and to find out what their successes are after high school. I mean, I think there says a lot about Meeker and what we provide through all of our extracurricular activities. I mean, I think it's a huge compliment to our administrators and to our history of what we've done as we've created, programs throughout the years that have created successful people after high school, and that's what we shoot for.
Sure. Much more important
than the Wiggins game.
Than the Wiggins game, it turned out okay.
And speaking of creating great people, I listened to your son. Was it Dexter?
That's Dexter, yes.
Yeah, boy, the other day sing the national anthem at the shootout, and wow.
Thank you.
Good job there.
Well, so I can't take any credit for any of that. That's some sort of God-given talent that I didn't have anything to do with. So.
You worked in choir in high school?
I was not. I still can't carry a tune in a bucket. So
you did a great job.
Thank you.
So the boys are pretty good athletes in their own right too with their swimming, right?
Yes.
They've set several records this summer.
Yes.
Oh,
so
that's
my
fantastic.
boys swim and play basketball and.
And who are your boys and their ages?
So Tucker is in 7th grade, and so he was on that. Their football team and basketball team went undefeated this year in 7th grade. Yes.
But they just won a championship last Saturday, which you coached?
Yes. Yeah.
Small world,
I know,
huh?
yes. And then Dexter's in 6th grade. He's also athletic, but he also loves being in the MAC performances, which is one of the reasons to live in Meeker. Our kids can do everything. Whereas if you lived in a city, I'm not sure that you would have certainly all those opportunities are out there, but to be able to do them all, I think, is harder in a city. And then I have a little one, Fletcher, who is 7.
All right.
Yes.
And there is a lot to be said about that as being in a small town and being able to have so many opportunities. And we do raise some good kids and provide them with a lot of good opportunities and that.
So after school, you went to CSU, you said, and then what transpired after that?
So I student taught in Brush. And then after student teaching, I got my first teaching job was in Fort Morgan. I was only 21 years old, and I taught at Fort Morgan Middle School for 2 years. And then we went to Cedar Edge from there, and I taught at Cedar Edge Middle School. Actually taught Dale's daughter-in-law and coached her.
Yeah.
So I taught and coached at Cedar Edge Middle School and then to Cedar Edge High School.
And is that when you first got into coaching? Was in Cedar Ridge then?
I coached. When I student taught, I coached. And then I coached in Fort Morgan as well, C-team. Learning under a lot of really good coaches and getting involved, yeah. And then I was the girls varsity coach at Cedar Edge High School for a bit. Then we went to a lot of life changes in my life and went to Montrose. And by this time I had gotten my master's degree from Adams State in counseling.
Okay.
So I was a counselor, and then the funny thing was, it's such a small world. So Jim Hanks and I taught together for, I think, maybe 2 years in Cedar Edge.
Okay.
And then we went our separate ways, and I went to Montrose, and he gave me a call and said, hey, I think Meeker's going to hire a counselor. Would you guys be interested in coming to Meeker? And I'm like, we had known when had kids a little bit later in my life, and so I thought, maybe it's time. I had been away from Meeker for 17 years and thought maybe it's time to go back. And I thought maybe this was, I don't know, divine intervention, some sort of opportunity. I mean, Jim Hanks and I hadn't talked together for a long time, and so he called me. So I interviewed here, ended up getting the job. We moved to Meeker in 2009, and I was Hallie's job, the elementary and middle school counselor for 2 years, and then they had some budget cuts and closed that position and offered me the high school counseling position. So I was the high school counselor. We went through a series of principals that didn't stay long, and when we hired Chris Selly, we had also hired another principal at the time, and then that principal changed his mind at the last minute that he wasn't going to come. So Chris Selly had just moved to town and gave me a call and said, "How do you feel about being an interim principal for a year?" And I was like, "All right, I guess I'll do that." And that was 7 years ago. So here I am.
You're not still interim, though,
No, I hope not.
Oh,
So
good.
anyway, not something I ever planned on doing. I was that kid that when I left Meeker, I was never going to come back. That was what I professed all along. And then just life changes. And when you raise your own kids, you have your own kids, you realize that there's a lot of good in raising kids in Meeker. And our school system is a good system for kids, and the rec district and all of the MAC, the community involvement. It's been a good place to raise my kids.
I hear you. And
Yep.
we kind of have all been that and gone out and got degrees, went to school and got degrees and did other things. And, well, Dale, he went to school and came back and he's been here. And and there's something to be said about that as well, you know. Good place to be.
Yep, good place to be, for sure. So, how, go back to your principal job a little bit. How has technology affected, changed the way you do your job nowadays?
Yeah, I think people that are not in the school system would be a little bit surprised about the amount of technology we use. And it has changed rather rapidly. So from the time I was a principal to now, which has only been 7 years, we have the one-to-one initiative. So every kid in the entire school district, kindergarten through 12th grade, has a Chromebook issued to them. Certainly the pandemic added a whole nother element. So all of our teachers have microphones, not quite as fancy as these, but microphones that are hooked up to their Promethean board and their computer at all times. And
The
then
what board?
it's a touch screen, a huge touch screen TV that's at the front of their room that is internet. So they can run, you could watch a YouTube video off of that, or you could run any lesson. It also turns into a whiteboard. You swipe and it changes functionality, and you can write on it, and then it saves your notes.
It's a chalkboard in my age.
Yeah, it's kind of like a chalkboard, but not exactly. Yes, but those are all, it's all interconnected. And so with the quarantine, if a student is quarantined, we open everything is through Google, and we open a link to Google Classroom, through Google Classroom to a Google Meet, and at home they log on and they are virtually present at the same time. So the teacher is talking to them and their face is up on the board, kind of like a big Zoom meeting. So certainly it's not preferable. It'd be nice if everybody was in school, but technology has changed everything, Dale. And there's good and bad. Let's just be real about that. Everyone having a little handheld access to any information at any time is not always good.
Right.
So it's changed classroom management. Certainly.
Was all this equipment in the school before the pandemic, or did it?
We had the Promethean boards before the pandemic. The first go around of those we've had for quite some time. These ones now are mobile. They're on. So maybe you might have noticed at regional wrestling we had them all rolled out into the commons, and they each had a different.
See the screens and then that's cool.
But the ability to go online and have a virtual classroom at the same time as kids in class, we transitioned to that pretty quickly. That was just like a couple weeks. We got that figured out. But Steve Tobin, also a Meeker High School alumni, is our IT director for the school district, and he actually lives in Grand Junction and commutes back and forth and stays with Blake Mobley, who another alumni.
And kind of the original genius of putting all this together. And
Blake Mobley is brilliant.
I remember the Beanpole project and Kim Cook, commissioners, starting that, another alumni.
Yes.
And,
Yep.
Yeah.
All you alumni are listening. It's Cowboy Coffee
with coaches.
and there's a questionnaire there. We'd love to have you be a part of the Alumni Association.
Sure, that'd be great. And again, Cowboy Coffee with Coaches.com, and there's alumni toggles icon there that you can switch on, and a simple little questionnaire. And one of the questions is, who are your teachers? Some of the teachers and...
So I had, Bev DeVore, and that was interesting because then I came back here and worked with Bev.
Okay.
Tom Seizure I had. Pat Robinson was a huge influence on my life. Probably Pat Robinson might have been one of the main reasons I went into education. She was a phenomenal teacher. And when I came back to Meeker, she was still working at that time, but we were working in different buildings, so I didn't have an opportunity to teach with Pat. But we had kind of a run of different English teachers during that time. Tammy Van Ort, when she came my senior year, was our English teacher. But it seemed like we had quite a few English teachers in between there. Steve Harmon, Ann Harmon.
And who was the principal?
So George Hertzke.
George Hertzke.
Mm-hmm.
So, Amy, when you look at it now, you've been the principal for 7 years and been successful. What do you think, like looking back, like in high school, was there people that influenced you significantly to help make you successful in this career? I mean, what do you think had the biggest impact that way?
Good question.
It is a good question. So Pat Robinson probably was very influential. Probably when I look back on it, Debbie Cook she was just always so positive and always had such a good outlook on everything. And I think all along Debbie understood that what we were doing was more important than volleyball. It was about life. And she always tried to make us just outstanding young ladies and how important that was to her. Bob Tucker had a huge influence on my life.
A lot of people, yes.
Yeah. He was... truly cared about all of us, but pushed you to be the best. I'm going to cough.
Sorry, I don't have failed on the bringing the coffee.
I wonder, in 1992, did you get a pride plaque of any sort?
Yes, we all have pride plaques. Do you remember those?
And what are pride plaques?
Debbie Cook made
Debbie
pride
Cook.
plaques.
I don't know how she ever got anything else done. The other thing that was weird was my senior year, Bob Ash was the superintendent. And Bob Ash, for all of our bus rides, made us little motivational packages that had candy and quotes and all sorts of stuff in it. He was super big follower of sports.
And you know who else wasn't? They deserve a shout out as the bakery. Do you remember the
Oh,
bakery? They
my
would
gosh.
make us cookies before every state tournament.
Yes.
And send them on the bus
Yes,
with us.
they would,
And
yep.
Zina never missed a ball game, I don't think.
No.
Her and Denise Pierce would travel all over watching us play ball.
Yep.
And that was something that Hallie mentioned the other day in our first podcast, was the community support, and I think this is kind of all part of that is the hoopla and
Yes.
but yeah, and everybody kind of feeling a part of it or getting to feel a part of it, and which is a lot of fun.
And it's still there. If you saw the Meeker girls play Friday night, those stands were packed. It was impressive. It was quite a fun time. So Meeker, like you say, Meeker travels well, always has, and they support their athletes.
And they support the school in other ways. This is, I think, when I got out of coaching and got into administration, you kind of wonder if the support is there for all aspects of the school, and it definitely is for our band program, our choir program, for academics. Meeker is, we talk about this quite frequently. In Meeker, when our kids go home, a lot of them sit down and have dinner with their parents, and their parents say, "How was your day? What did you do in school today?" And they tell them, and it's a conversation. And that's good because they know what's happening in the school. A lot of them, we laughed a lot during the construction project of the new school because the people the construction that came into Meeker would say, "Well, do you know who the town planner is, or do you know who whatever?" And I'm like, I probably have their cell phone number. Let me just text them. But it is true. People support the school in all ways. We felt that definitely through the construction project, through academics and sports and extracurriculars.
And what if it's, go ahead.
It was a little work to get the bond or the mill levy passed
Yeah.
through. It took a couple times
Yes.
to try that, but then once it went, and people see the construction.
Yeah.
It's just been incredible, the response to
So
the
positive.
building and what's been done up there. And you guys really get a pat on the back for what you guys did
thanks.
up there. So it's fantastic
Thank you.
facility.
Yeah, and how is it being in the teachers and the students in that facility?
So I think, I was one when Chris Selly first said, hey, I think we should try for a bond. And I said, there's nothing wrong with this school. And I kind of got the whole Meeker alumni defensiveness about me. And then it was funny, we would bring in architects or consultants and they would all walk in and say, gosh, it's so old and dingy in here. And then when you start looking, and we had drinking fountains that had fallen off the walls and just different things. And so once I got on board, I wasn't ever not on board. I just thought I just don't imagine we've had 2 mill levies fail or whatever it was. And then I can't imagine that this bond's going to pass. And it did, thanks to a lot of hard work. And once again, the community coming together. We had people just coming out of the woodwork to support it. And that surprised me. A lot of that's, I think, can be attributed to Chris Selly and his leadership in the district. It's been really good.
Yes.
And now when I've given quite a few tours of the school, and overall it's pretty positive. Yeah, I mean, it's 99% positive.
Yeah.
What is super fun is when we host other teams and they come from maybe the Vail Valley or the Aspen area, and they're like, wow, for a bunch of hicks, you guys have a pretty nice school. So that's fun.
Yes.
And it is nice. And I think our kids they've always been well behaved. We're lucky and blessed to have good kids in Meeker, but they take care of the place and they have a lot of pride in it. And it's nice to have rooms that are air conditioned and heated. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Sat in some of those without that
Yes.
myself. Open the window if you're hot.
For sure. And so a couple other questions were the degrees you got, and you mentioned that. Spouse's name, you haven't mentioned that.
I have not. I'm married to Dan Chinn.
Okay.
He's from Cedar Ridge. And we have 3 children.
Yes, okay.
Dan's retired,
Dan is retired, yeah.
and he was
So he was a coach and a teacher and a school counselor. And then most recently when we moved here, he worked for Mine Springs.
okay. Okay. And he's now on the Recreation District Board.
He is on the rec board, yep.
Keeping his toes in the water.
I mean, I think that's the thing with retirement. You kind of want to be out of it. And because, like I say, we're older with younger children, our children keep us pretty busy.
Yeah. And a good way to stay involved, for
Yes,
sure.
sure.
And that's appreciated.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to reach back here and grab this Herald Times book right quick.
Well, back in some of your coaching days, if I remember right, you brought your Cedar Ridge team up here to one of the first shootouts.
I did. We actually stayed at my parents' house, and your daughter-in-law was on that team. And I played Hallie's
I
team.
was going to say, I think I can remember the outcome of that particular game.
Yep.
And several others. How many years did you coach at Cedar Ridge?
Oh, it wasn't that long. Probably 5 years.
You had several players, though, that went on to play in college.
I did, yeah. I was just incredible. I had a really good group of athletes, and I had them in middle school and then in high school, so that's always kind of nice because you have some continuity, and I knew the kids. So those were fun years.
Can you get a camera on these, or I don't know how we do this, but just a...
If you can see that over there on that one side, number 22.
In the Herald Times, they have all the newspapers are archived and bound copies going back to 1885, the original. They're stored in the safe in here. But so anyway, I got this one out, or Caitlin got it out for me, and I opened it up, and this was the page that I opened it up to, and it's of Amy, number 22 there, spiking the ball, talking about them being 15-0 down there. We went through and marked a few others. Full page ad, and again, here's this was like a booster page and a list of all the businesses that'd be interesting to see how many are still.
There's my dad's joy surveying.
There you go.
And you know what? That year in volleyball, it was the year sincerely there was 56 girls out for the volleyball team.
Why do you remember that?
Well, because I remember they had traveling, like we had to switch teams on who even got to ride the bus.
Oh, geez.
So this is 91, is that when
91, yeah.
Yeah, 91. But yeah, so there's the community support. I mean, there are more than 70 people listed there, businesses. What do we got here?
Now they're getting ready to go to
Set side on
regionals.
first state title. Then there was another. The thrill of victory. We got the thrill of victory, and then we got the agony of defeat.
I'm never coming on this podcast again.
God. But that's we've gotten second a lot in a lot of sports. I remember when we were in we've never won a football championship, and I remember talking to Pat Sullivan one time when I think our 97 team,
That's right.
Coriel and them were in the finals, and Pat back in the 50s. They
52,
were
I believe it was.
52 and 50.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's 2 or 3
It was-
years in a row.
Yeah.
They were in the championship game, and I kind of said something about not ever winning it, and he got offended. You got to win to get there, he said, really quick like. And, but in wrestling, we've gotten second. I don't know, 14 times maybe, many times. But it's a lot of fun getting there. You do have to win to get there, but yeah.
And in the end, all of the
Humbling
lessons you
lessons.
learn along the way are really what it's about, because
yeah,
you know,
and humbling,
yeah.
staying humble.
And you know what examples, when I look at that picture, there's Carolyn Whiteman talking to you, and I can remember being in middle school watching Carolyn play, and then, you know, as a freshman, you guys were seniors. The leadership and the role models, and the fact is that kids are watching the older kids, and I think that's what's cool about then and now.
sure, it's the same thing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have their little heroes and
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who were some of your heroes in growing up then?
Well, so I had, Leaf was
question.
my older brother, and so I had 2 brothers, older and younger, so I was around boys all of the time. So Leaf's class was also pretty successful. They made it to the state tournament in basketball, and I remember in middle school going to watch Leaf at the state tournament and thinking how cool that was. And I remember specifically asking my dad, is there a state in middle school? And he's like, no. And it's funny because my kids do that same thing to me now. Dexter's always like, could we play state? Could we maybe schedule linemen and go play them? That's not how it works in middle school, Dexter. So I think having older, Leaf and Kirk Henderson, Steve Rodriguez, Mike Parr, those were all in Leaf's grade. And I mean, they were like extra big set of big brothers to me all of the time, people to look up to. I didn't know a lot of the older girls. When I was a freshman, Amy Schultz, Mindy Clapper, that whole crew were seniors. And I remember riding the bus with them and learning an awful lot from them. And they were just leaders, you know, all the way around, taught you how to work hard. Between them and Bob Tucker, you never didn't work hard.
No,
So,
that's a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carolyn Whiteman was a couple years older than me, and Vonda K. Vandiver was a year older than me. Peggy Landers, those girls were always hard workers and just good people, and taught you about the expectations. If you're going to be in a Meeker program, you're going to be a good person, number one. And I think all of us were scared to death to disappoint Debbie Cook. So you just did what you were supposed to do.
And we're going to have, speaking of Debbie Cook, they are scheduled and hopefully confirmed to be our next guest, both Jim and Debbie, next week. So that'll be fun and some laughs. And,
Jim's
good
some
deal.
of my first memories of watching him play football. We went over to watch him play Sheridan for the state championship game.
Yeah.
That was,
Yeah,
That was
he's
Quite an athlete.
one that
Yeah.
we got second in.
yeah, we got second in that one again.
He got knocked out.
He got
didn't he?
hurt, and Elifar was in there with him, and Jim McKean. I remember some of those guys back from '68. But you were talking about some of the people that kind of you remember through the years. But I
Steve
definitely
Nislanik came in. I think
Yeah.
he was his backup, and he was a sophomore or
Yeah.
something. And I remember listening to it on KRAI radio.
And we honored those guys a few years ago at a
that
football
was just
game.
right. You did, didn't you? I remember that. Yeah, that was pretty cool. That's be able to have them come in and
sure.
visit with us, and we'll reminisce with them.
Oh,
a
that
little
would
bit.
be super fun. Yes.
So, well, we appreciate you doing this and coming in, and hopefully we can get more people to some of the people that you mentioned as classmates and teammates. We'll go to cowboycoffeewithcoaches.com and fill out the questionnaire so that we can contact you, and then maybe just, if nothing else, read your questionnaire, on the air, and
then we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, see where it goes
we'll
from
just
there.
visit. So
Yeah.
appreciate Amy coming in and talking
Thanks.
to us today and tonight. Been a lot of fun. Brought back some memories for sure.
yes, and some good recalls, some good laughs.
Some of the stories going back and forth before we went on the air were probably the most priceless parts of it. So
Amy made sure I didn't bring up a lot of stuff.
Yeah, which ones we can clear and,
Yeah.
and not. And
Yeah.
Rich, I don't know. He didn't have the record button on the whole time. I don't think. Right? Yeah. So, no, very good. So, Cowboy Coaches with Cowboy Coffee with Coaches, cowboycoffeewithcoaches.com. Fill out the questionnaire. Let us know where you're at, what you've been doing, and thank you, Amy, for coming on. And maybe kind of let people know we got the RA shootout, the boys version, starting Thursday.
and that'll be in Amy's building. So
Yes,
come
yes.
up and watch those. Be a bunch of good boys again playing, just like we had good girls playing last week. So
Yep. Varsity starts at 7:30, but I think do we have 2 or 3 boys teams?
there's actually 8 boys teams, 3 Meeker teams that are playing A, B, and C, or the varsity
okay,
B and
that's-
C,
Okay.
and then there's 8 teams total in the tournament. And we've got Palisade, we've got Aspen, who's
Right.
made the Final Four in their division last year. And Longmont Christian is who Meeker opens up with at 7:30 on Thursday.
Okay. So let's fill up the gym and have some hoot and hollering and a little fun. So go Cowboys, and thanks again for joining in.
Thanks. Thank you.
Take care.